Hello, this is Steve, your YouTube English teacher, with this week's video focusing on speaking for B2 and C1 Cambridge exams. We are looking at having ideas in the exam. They ask you some strange questions, and first you have to have an idea before you can use your English skills to demonstrate your level of English. Well, that having an idea process is something I want to think about practicing in this video. I think you can practice because if you practice looking at pictures and thinking of relevant and coherent things to say about them, you will get better at it. So yes, you can do it. And we're looking at part 2 and part 3 today, which is the parts where we really need to think about there is some material that you then have to think what I'm going to say about before you can actually say it. So let's get into this. Here's our first example. And what I'd recommend doing is using my ideas. Okay, so this idea, when I saw these pictures, I thought, okay, what am I expected to talk about? Well, what's fun about jumping out of a plane, parachuting? It's like flying. You see the world. When we're talking about skateboarding in the city, well, you're traveling through a big city. You can do tricks. These are fun things for this topic. And in terms of comparing them, maybe, yes, they are both adventurous. One is more dangerous, one is more exciting. So please use these ideas. Get your stopwatch on your mobile phone, which is tantamount to a pocket computer. Put a 1-minute timer on and speak using these ideas for 1 minute. Should be easy. Pause the video, go. How did it go? Leave a comment, let me know. Write me an email, write me a postcard. But the point is, once you've got the ideas, it's fairly easy just to put them together. Remember, important for B2 and C1, do not waste time saying, I can see 2 people in the sky. No, that's not the language functions we need to see. We know you can say that. Answer the question. Better to say, well, I think parachuting would be fun because it feels like flying. In addition, you can see the world from a new perspective. You can see your town like you've never seen it before. That would be really interesting. On the other hand, skateboarding, well, it's also a fun activity. You get to travel through the city in a different way. And maybe you are performing impressive tricks, which would be satisfying and quite fun, and you can do it with your friends. They're both very adventurous activities, but I guess parachuting, jumping out of a plane is more dangerous and more exciting than skateboarding, although even that could be dangerous. And there we go, that's going to be about 1 minute. That's a nice answer. So my point here is getting these 2 ideas for each. If you can think of something clear, it makes it much easier to speak for 1 minute. And this is something you can practice. Seeing a picture like this and thinking, okay, typical ideas that I'm expected to express for these pictures. Such as these ones, different places to go shopping. Why don't you pause the video and write down a couple of ideas that you would have to talk about each photo. Here's mine. I was thinking, okay, here we're in some kind of sports shop, so sporty people will shop here. People who want to work out and go running and practice their fitness. People looking for a bargain because it looks like a big shop with lots of offers and deals and things. Whereas here, it's more of like a fashion-based shop, maybe a luxury shop. Maybe they're very good quality shoes, and we can talk about people who can afford good quality. There's going to be more people shopping here, and there's going to be lower prices, although they both sell clothes, so they're both useful from that perspective of not walking around naked. Ideas like that, typical ideas. Please try and do this speaking exam. We're going to have lots of speaking exams to look at today, so please look at them and try and do it. Use it as a resource. Record yourself, as we've spoken about before. Let's keep going. How are the parents feeling? Try and answer the question now. Pause, 1 minute, typical things to say. I was thinking of ideas like, of course, how are they feeling? Happy, scared, proud, happy for the new life. They're both very important. One is earlier, one is more intense maybe for these moments for parents. But pause the video. How did it go? Another one. Why do people choose these types of accommodation? Pause the video, try and answer it. Typical ideas we could express here. Well, we've got one that's very natural. Maybe it brings back memories of camping when you were a child. This is more like camping outside, a bit more rustic. Whereas this one is more of a beach holiday. It's very close to the beach. It's a modern place with lots of light. Maybe they're both nice. In fact, they are. They both look lovely, don't they? I'd go on holiday here. but maybe this one is a bit less comfortable because you're outside and you don't have a kitchen and a bathroom and all these things. But it's more unusual. This one, you would take a photo for your social media and look very cool. Lots of ideas you could talk about, answering the question about why people choose them, while you compare them and make, as I keep saying, clear, coherent points about the photos, because you've had an idea and then you can express it using your level of English. Why do people enjoy music in these ways? What would we say? I don't have any idea. Well, I mean, I have ideas, but I don't think I've written them down, because now it's up to you to answer them. If you're in my class, answer them. One nice thing I did do in class this week was ask one student to write the ideas for these photos, like we've just been practicing, 2 ideas for each photo and a couple of comparisons. Then pass the notes to another student, and the other student is the one who has to speak for 1 minute using those ideas. It's an interesting experiment that makes us think about how we have ideas and how we turn them into language. And it helps you with this process, which I keep saying. The point is, you can practice this. See a photo and think, okay, here's what I'm going to say. And you do it, and you get better at it. Why do they play these types of games? Again, maybe different ideas here. Maybe one is more about strategy and technique and takes a long time, and one is more about fast reactions and sports and more social and playing online, and one is more individual. Different comparisons that you can have, but of course they're all fun. Why are these popular destinations for a day out? Having a picnic next to a lake with your family, or going to the beach to play. I'm sure there's lots of reasons we can think of. They're both nice days out. Why are they eating lunch in these ways? Again, a picnic in the park, or eating at a shopping centre with some fast food with a nice drink of chips. Delicious. And my penultimate one, we've got 10 speaking exams here, by the way, so I've been working hard. What are they gaining from these trips? Here looks like some kind of school trip to an old European, Mediterranean, Roman city perhaps. And here, more like a family trip in the countryside, but I'm sure they're gaining lots from these trips. And finally, a music question. How is the music affecting their moods? Again, try and answer it by yourself. Next week, we're going to go into a bit of detail about some use of English questions based on these photos, is my plan. But today, it's about having clear ideas and fitting them into that 1 minute little presentation. For part 2, let's move on to part 3, where we're going to do something similar. In part 3, as we know, it's a discussion between you and your partner, or 2 partners if there are 3 people. And we're given a scenario. For example, imagine you are considering getting a pet, you and your friend, you and your partner, whatever. Here are some different factors to consider when getting a pet. Talk together about how important they are when getting a pet. And remember, the first part is just to discuss them, to say why they're important, not to choose one. First, you're just discussing. So here, again, the key thing is, what am I expected to say for each one? What's my idea? Well, the time commitment, the obvious idea is it can be a big commitment. You have to take the dog for a walk every day. You have to feed it every day. These are the things you would be saying for this. Do you see what I mean? Do you agree? But these are the ideas that come to mind that you need to be able to express. It's expensive, especially if you have a big dog. They eat a lot, and you need to find the right food. Unfortunately, maybe the cheapest one from the supermarket leads to a lot of messy dog poo. Same for the vet if you have a problem. Vaccines, every year another vaccine you have to pay for. In terms of your home, animals need space. Do they destroy the furniture? Lots of cats destroy sofas, and you have to be careful with which sofa you buy. You need to consider this when getting a pet. Typical ideas that you can express. In terms of your lifestyle and routine, if you're at school all day, what's the animal doing? And what about if you go on holiday for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in summer? What's the animal doing? You need to consider this when getting a pet. And finally, the type of pet. We can talk about different types of pet and the level of commitment they need from an owner. For example, a dog being a big commitment, but being lots of fun. And then a cat, a bit less. And a fish, obviously, very different. So these are typical ideas you could be expressing when you have this exam task in front of you. And again, practicing what am I expected to say, is a skill that you can pick up the more you do it. I was very bad at this when I started as an English teacher. And now I think I'm really good at it because I've seen hundreds of exams. And obviously I think I could do this in other languages as well because I've practiced that skill. We can think about the same one again, the same idea. Like we did last time, maybe a nice idea for you as the student now is to write down a typical idea that you would talk about for each of these factors. Imagine you're going to study for an important exam. Here are some different resources you can use. Talk together about how these resources could be useful. What's the typical idea? Well, maybe we're saying things like, textbooks have lots of information, but they're a bit boring and maybe they're old, they're out of date. Maybe they're 20 years old, so it's not so relevant. The teacher, maybe they're good at explaining things, but they don't have so much time. If there's 30 students, you're not going to be talking to the teacher for half an hour each student. ChatGPT is great if you know how to use it, but it can also hallucinate and give you nonsense answers and make the teacher think that you haven't done any work because you cheated. So you have to be careful. Google is similar, isn't it? It can be useful, but it can be frustrating. If you Google something and you get some nonsense result, it happens. And maybe Wikipedia is a good place to start, but maybe it's not so good for deep learning where you really have to understand something if they're just giving you a summary. Typical ideas to express, and then we put these into the structures that we've learned for part 3 of, well, in my opinion, it's a good place to start, but maybe not so good if you really want to learn like a difficult chemistry topic and you want to practice it yourself. Do you see what I mean? Yes, absolutely. I think Wikipedia is good, but then you go somewhere else, like the textbook, and then you continue that conversation. Here are some more tasks for you to practice, thinking about typical ideas, doing it in class with your friends if you can. I'd like you to imagine that you and your friends are considering quitting social media. Here are some factors to consider when making this decision. Talk together about how these factors are important when deciding to quit social media. And you talk and you say the typical things. I'd like you to imagine that you and your friend are thinking about studying abroad for a term. Here are some factors to take into consideration when making this decision to study abroad. Talk together about what you need to consider for each of these factors. And we do the same thing. And finally, let's finish with a fun one. I'd like you to imagine that you and your friends are choosing a movie for a night together. Here are some different things to consider when choosing the movie. Talk together about why they're important for making a good night with your friends. And you say the typical things as we've been talking about, and you put them in the nice structure. So lots of practice for you there. And the main thing is actually practice it. The more you practice with this type of conversation, the more comfortable you will be in the exam when you have to do this slightly artificial format of speaking, but you can get better at it. That's the whole point here. Right, next week we'll keep these questions, but we'll do some grammar based on it. That's my plan if I have time to put that together for my classes next week. Hope that was useful. Goodbye.